Okay. All right, this is Sarah Milligan with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. I am interviewing Bob Noble today in the OSU Library. Today's date is May 20th, 2025. We are talking about Mr. Noble's experience as a student, primarily at OSU during the 1960s, relationship to some of the free speech movement, things happening on campus, and more broadly, just what it was like being a student in the 60s here, and his life experience leading up to and away. So that's it.
Good.
Thanks for joining today.
I'm glad to be here.
All right, so we talked a little bit about this, but I want to start with just some background information about you. So can you tell me a little bit about, where you grew up, a little bit about your family, and then we are going to sort of talk through some of the grand adventuring you had.
Okay, my father was born in 1919, and when World War II came, he enlisted in the Army Air Corps, and he was in well over a year and well into pilot's training. And one day after a solo flight, they sent him in for a medical exam, and his heart was palpitating, and they gave him an honorable discharge. So he has a veteran's headstone on his grave in Hominy. Well, when he was released from the Air Corps, he finally found a job in Borger Phillips, Texas. And I had been born July 9th, 1944, when I was 3 months old. Of course, I don't remember. We moved to Borger, Texas, and eventually lived in a company house. My dad was a supervisor. It was a company town. I was growing up in Phillips, Texas. I thought I had a life plan there. I would graduate and go to college in Texas and work in a plant. My dad saw automation was coming, and he applied with a company out of New York City called Hydrocarbon Research Incorporated, and he went into overseas oil refining. So one afternoon, hot afternoon, I remember how hot and dusty it was, the 5 o'clock whistle blew. We went home for dinner, and we're sitting around the dinner table, the five of us. My brother's a year and a half younger than I am, and my sister's 8 years younger than I am. We're sitting around the dinner table. My dad says we're moving to Brazil. We're talking 1956. Took almost 2 days to get there in 1956. And the only time I've ever been sick in an airplane was flying over the Andes in a prop airplane in a terrible storm that rocked the plane violently. But we landed in Sao Paulo, Brazil after 2 days, and lived in Brazil 2 years. Came back, eventually wound up on the east coast of the United States in Pennsylvania. Went to junior high school, a full year in Pennsylvania. My dad wrote up the training manuals for a job in Greece. 1958, we flew to Europe on prop planes. They were still prop planes. And back then you dressed in coat and tie. They gave you pillows and blankets. We got on the plane about 7 p.m. They served a 3-course dinner. We went to sleep and landed in Britain the next day. We went on to the World's Fair in Brussels in 1958, and then spent 2 really incredible years in Greece. Did all kinds of things in Greece, all kinds of historical things. I really wanted to come back to the United States to go to high school. I was in a very, very good private school in English, very good teachers. There were that many American kids there, military and diplomatically. So I came back and went to high school my last 2 years at Hominy High School, which is our familiar home. As I told you earlier, my great-grandparents are buried in the cemetery at Hominy. Yeah. My grandparents too. So it's really ironic. My birth certificate would say Hominy, Oklahoma. My graduation would say Hominy, Oklahoma. My university would say OSU. And in the interim, I've been on 3 different continents. So after I graduated high school in Hominy, I'd always gone to small schools, and my dad had taken a job in Panama. I went down to Panama one year. I went to the Canal Zone Junior College, was in the Canal Zone during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And then I came back to OSU my sophomore year. I actually put another 4 years in at OSU, 1 year towards a master's degree that I never quite completed. So I graduated in the spring of 1966. Another year left in the spring of 67 and went to Perkins School of Theology at SMU to work on what then was called a Bachelor of Divinity degree. The degree now is called Master's of Divinity. And I got married while at OSU, and that's a big part of my OSU story, meeting my wife here. And but anyway, I received a wonderful education and loved the university and have come back often. My family has 2 endowed scholarships here, one in memory of my wife and one in memory of my son-in-law who died of cancer of the stomach. So we've endowed 2 scholarships here at the university too.
I do want to come back to your larger relationship and family relationship with OSU before we get into things. But I have questions about all these movings around while you were younger.
Okay, which one do you want to go for first?
Yeah, so what do you remember about how you felt or how you reacted when your dad came home to your family in Texas and said, "We're moving to Brazil"?
The first thing we did is we somehow found an atlas and tried to discern where Brazil was or is, and then we were amazed at the logistics of getting there. We could fly out of Tulsa to Houston. This was all prop planes. It took the better part of a day and a half with the connections. I have certificates back then. The airlines gave you certificates if you flew across the equator. So I have them in my scrapbook. But had no idea of what that would be like to step off an airplane and everybody's speaking a completely different language. Had no idea of, I have to be a little bit careful there. On one end, the poverty we would see, but on another end, the opulence. There were a lot of folks there who were exceedingly well off. We took one trip with the family into the interior and spent a better part of a week on a coffee plantation. On the railroad, we went through a small town called Americana, and it had been settled by Confederate expatriates who did not want to live under the Union flag. Some of the family names in the 50s were still there, but no one spoke English anymore. But the name of the town was Americana.
Interesting.
So it was seismic. That kind of transition from a small, very small little company town to a completely different culture. I learned Portuguese. Our whole family was quite fluent in Portuguese before we came back. My little sister was only 2 and then 4 when we came back. When we got to the U.S., she was dumbfounded that everybody spoke English. She didn't know quite how to take that because in the culture she had learned languages in, there were 2 languages. She spoke Portuguese outside. So the real shock, there's a shock at both ends. There's a shock when you realize you're a stranger. The Brazilian people were exceedingly accepting and loving and supporting. Gosh, they were wonderful. I had wonderful friends that they took us in. But there was a shock when we came back. I'm talking with these kids I haven't seen in 2 years, and they say, we're going to have a sock hop. And I didn't have any idea in the world what a sock hop was. I had not heard any of that music. I had no idea what they were talking about. And I had no idea how their lives had evolved through upper elementary school, first year of junior high school, and all of the kind of cliquishness you get in public schools that way. I had no idea how to pick up on the social clues on that. But the folks who traveled like that we're a small community unto ourselves. Some of the same people we've been with in Brazil were in Greece. We met new friends. Had a lot of friends who families were in the Army or with the State Department program for Greece. So we were all kind of pilgrims, and we had that in common. But
So did you go to American schools then?
yeah, there was that big of English-speaking community. Most of the kids were kids of Army who had a big mission there. Greece had barely survived a communist revolution, and so the United States was investing heavily in Greece and the Greek government and the Greek infrastructure. Huge. The program was called JustMake, Joint Military Humanitarian Assistance for Greece. There were, I'm guessing, something on the order of 1,000 Americans in the Athens area, just with the State Department and the JustMake program. But the school attracted, for instance, this is wild, crazy things happen. The school attracted other students too. So the son of the ambassador from Ethiopia to Greece went to our English-speaking school. And we were playing soccer one day, and he bypassed a kid from Mississippi who knocked him down and called him the N-word, and we had a fight on our hands. And the person we were defending was the son of the ambassador from Ethiopia. And you look back on it, all these years later, and you say, was this an episode from the Twilight Zone or what? Who else in the world does this kind of thing happen to?
Yeah.
But life was full of just quirky moments like that are unique to that group of us who moved around and through the late 50s and early 60s.
So what made you want to come back and finish your high school degree in hominy?
Probably the quickest answer to that is American TV. I wanted to be an American teenager. Yeah. I, from what I had gotten a hold of in between times, I knew there was a whole culture with that you don't get living overseas in a sophomore class of 30 kids. So I just thought I was being deprived, that I couldn't watch American TV and have American music and go to sock hops. I see that in a completely different light now.
Right. Did your parents come back with you, or did you come back and stay with family here?
It was complicated. We came back, my brother and I, and we were going to stay with a great aunt, and my mom and sister went back to Greece. My brother became quite ill with a congenital kidney situation that put him in the hospital for 2 or 3 months. My mom came back and then stayed. My dad went back and worked in Greece. He did not make my high school graduation, or neither one of my parents made my graduation here at OSU either. But the kind of life we lived, that was not uncommon. You kind of didn't expect that, Yeah. So, I always think of Hominy as my hometown and where my roots are. My own 2 children don't think of it that way. I don't think in the way they were raised, they think about family grounding and roots the way my wife and I did. Before they graduated from high school, they were already into computers. So, But I just wanted to be an American teenager. I wanted to, I wanted to be cool. I wanted to drive a car. You couldn't drive overseas because you couldn't get a license as a non-national. Usually licenses were not available until a person was maybe 20. Mm-hmm. And driving overseas was completely different back then. So I just had in my mind I wanted to be a teenager.
So tell me about your decision to go to Panama after that then.
Well, I thought I was a great football player. And I wanted to play one more year. I looked at the size of the school and where it was, and I honestly thought, well, that could be fun too, and it did turn out to be. One of the most hilarious things happened. I had a bunch of friends, and Panama celebrated Carnival or Mardi Gras too, and so we went out all night on Shrove Tuesday, all night. We show up for an 8 o'clock gym class at Canal Zone Community College, and my friend Charlie is standing on our side of the net like this, with his head like this. The volleyball came over, hit him on the head, bounced back over to the other side. So, and just like it had been returned. So, anyway, Panama was quite an adventure. From the chem lab windows at the Canal Zone, we could watch the U-2 planes that were surveilling Cuba land in the afternoon. It was, like I say, sometimes I look back and say, was I in an episode of The Twilight Zone? And but it was wonderful. I had wonderful friends. I rode the Panama Railroad train back and forth every week. My parents were on the Atlantic side. And incidentally, the canal runs north and south, not east and west. If you glance at a map.
Yeah, I have to picture that in my head. Okay, yeah. I got you.
Some of the train cars were refurbished. You went right along the canal. It was a wonderful year, but I bumped into several really good teachers who spent some time with me, encouraged me to continue my college, particularly Dr. Lake in mathematics. The Professor Bowen in history was quite good and encouraged me. So I made pretty good grades at the Canal Zone Community College, but I made better grades when I got to OSU because I didn't know anybody, and so by default, I studied.
Had more time. Well, we talked a little bit about this with the Canal Zone Junior College, because my question before we started the interview was, who were the teachers at this? And it seems like they were able to recruit American teachers primarily.
They all were, yeah. Like I said, the Pan Canal Company was very prosperous and very well off. A lot of the teachers were PhDs. Dr. Lake was a PhD from Kansas. I had a wonderful English teacher who got me very interested in writing. And I've been trying to write ever since. His name was Musselman, and he had studied at University of Chicago. And I later figured out that he had studied under the author who wrote The River Runs Through It. Mm. And he really got me interested in writing kind of carefree prose that were popular back in the 60s. So I've kept a journal ever since I took English at the Canal Zone Junior College. And we'd write these essays and read them out loud in class. It was so I had 2 PhDs at my freshman year there.
Yeah, that is pretty amazing.
They were very good teachers. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you were there during the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis. How aware were you of what was going on?
Well, in the Canal Zone, you were quite aware. There was an MP on every corner. There were armored vehicles moving up and down the streets. We had a curfew. We had to be in, I've forgotten if it was 8 or 10 o'clock. That only lasted a week. And one memorable thing, when it was over, a lot of the ships were coming back through the canal going the other way. And some of us, my friends I'd mentioned with the volleyball incident, one of the places we frequented was the bar at El Panama Hilton. And you could afford it on the economy, and it was quite nice. They'd put a pipe organ in there from a theater in New York City, and they had a guy playing the pipe organ. We'd go in and drink a few drinks, and we were drinking after the crisis, and there were two Marines who had been in the trenches at Guantanamo Bay. They were very suntanned, and we said hello to them, and they were drinking hard. Well, the man on the organ started playing the Marine Corps hymn, and they popped up to attention, and one of them had drank so much that he just stayed rigid and fell over. I hope he didn't get a concussion because he hit the floor very hard, but just remember little moments like that. And I remember the tracked vehicles, I remember the curfew, but what was interesting was a week later things were back to normal. Like, did we imagine that or not? And of course I had studies and things to do, and I did study quite a bit, so I went back to college life pretty quickly too. We did not get the kind of TV coverage that folks in the States got. So we could listen to the radio, and we had newspapers, but we were a little bit more removed. But as I mentioned, we watched the U-2 planes land every afternoon too. So
yeah, well, that was my question. Like, what kind of access to news you had?
Well, there were newspapers in English, two of them, and then radio, and we would talk about it some at the college too. So we knew we knew what was happening in real time. We didn't have the video you were seeing, it's a different experience listening to it on the radio too.
Yeah.
So, but we a lot of military in the Canal Zone, and we were very, very aware that it was you could not go across the canal. The canal was completely. Nobody had any idea what ships were going through day and night.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Were you worried? Like, was there any sense of like unsafety for your proximity to things?
Well, I was 18 at the time, so you kind of, it's there, and it's kind of a dual track thing. You stop and read the newspaper and listen to the news, but then I went to class and drank beer with my friends. You could drink beer for a dime, a draft in Panama. That's when I started beer drinking. It was cheaper. A Coke was a quarter. The beer was a dime. So we'd go to the Knights of Columbus before curfew, and they had great empanadas. We'd have an empanada and a beer. We'd go back, and most of the guys played cards. I tried to study a little bit. So it was very strange, 18 years old, and realizing that, yeah, this is very serious, but at the same time, going to class every day.
Yeah, just life.
Yeah.
So it seems like I understand you only stayed 1 year at the junior college. So what made you decide to transfer from there to come up to OSU? Like, what was that process like?
I don't know. I just had that experience. I thought another year at the junior college will be the same teachers. It's a small faculty. It'll be the same thing. I want the credibility of a Oklahoma State degree, and I'd like to be, I think, half a continent away from my parents, and I had worked hard. I could pay for a lot of my own education. The first year I came to OSU, I remember very clearly because I'd worked and saved my money. I paid my tuition and fees, including some fees for labs and everything. $135. $135. And books, though, again, on top of that, you had to buy books. And I have some books from that era that I've kept, and one of the more technical books was $6.95. But I had seen the college. I thought, enough of this,
Yeah.
I've seen it. I can get to OSU and start a life kind of of my own. I won't be commuting home every weekend.
Mm. So why OSU?
My uncle was on the faculty here.
Your dad's brother?
Yeah, Dr. Bob Noble in animal sciences.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew some of the people I'd gone to high school with in Hominy were here. And I linked up with a friend I played football with and saw Ron real often. His name was Ron Coltarn. And I lost track of Ron. I don't know what happened to him, but we were independents. We were both watching our nickels and dimes, and but I'd see Ron pretty often.
Yeah. So your uncle was here as a faculty, so you knew you had somebody. It seems like you had other family who had gone to OSU as well. Is that correct? Do you remember that correctly, or not until that point?
In the Noble family, from the time they came to Oklahoma in the late 1880s,
Mm-hmm.
My uncle was the only one who'd gotten a college degree.
Okay.
But by virtue of Dr. Bob getting a degree, my grandparents, my grandmother in particular, Grandmother Noble, and my dad and mom, it was not optional from early on, even before we went to Brazil. You will go to college and you will go to Stillwater. It was written in the family logbook. And when you're raised that way, and particularly grandmother, when she serves apple pie telling you about you need to go to college, I didn't second guess the family tradition at all. No, this is where I'm supposed to go.
Well, and your uncle, how did he end up at OSU? Do you know?
Well, he'd served in World War II, so he had the GI Bill.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd been wounded. He had half-time disability. He was married. He came to OSU. And I think he just discovered what all of us have discovered over the years, that this is a wonderful place. Education is freedom and enlightenment. I want to be a part of that. So he got his BS here. He went on to K-State, did a master's and a PhD, and came back and taught. I think he just decided once he was a part of a university community, this is where I'd like to be. And my friend Ron was an ag major, and he studied several courses under my uncle. He was he was someone the students felt good about, and he worked hard with them. And kids from Hominy would come up, and if they needed help, sometimes he'd get them a job cleaning the egg barns, and but OSU was just kind of programmed in.
Yeah.
And I don't regret that at all.
So moving back to Oklahoma from world travels, how was the transition for you when you got here? You talked a little bit about enrollment, but was it easy? Did you transfer any of your coursework from the junior college?
I got about 30 plus hours of credit from the Canal Zone.
That's great.
Yeah.
Where did you feel prepared for OSU? Was OSU easier? Like, where did things sort of stand for you as integrating into the classrooms?
I was okay. at classroom, I had good teachers. In the private school, Hominy was credible. Canal Zone had 2 or 3 really good teachers, so I was prepared. Courses vary. Some of the large freshman courses were pretty easy to get through. Some of the sophomore courses began to get pretty serious. But I was prepared for that, and I adapted to it. I had to study a little bit more at OSU. And the thing that I remember most about that transition is just the size. The Canal Zone Junior College, there might have been, at the very most, only 200 full-time students. My high school graduated with 43. My sophomore freshman year, my class was on the order of 30. And OSU was already big in 1963 when I got here. So I jokingly said years later, and with some truth to it, what I learned at OSU was how to deal with bureaucracies. I learned to negotiate bureaucracies, which is an important skill to have. But the size was there. I didn't know many people because I'd been gone a year and didn't come with my high school class. So kind of by default, I just studied a lot, which turned out to be pretty advantageous. So I wear my jacket because I have my Phi Kappa Phi pin.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, talk to me about some of the social aspects of coming to OSU. Like, how easy was it? And you mentioned there was a few people you knew, but how easy was it to sort of like get to know people socially? Do you remember some of the things you joined or things you did?
Well, I met a man named Bruce, and Bruce had served 2 years in the Army, and his friend Doug, and he was married and had a baby, but I met him, and he invited me over to his house for dinner a couple of times. I didn't do a whole lot that sophomore year socially. My parents were gone. Boy, it was something to see the weekends in 1963. The first full year, I think I lived in East Bennett, and I want to tell you, everybody went home on the weekends after football season. And that changed a little bit over the years as even in the short time I was here from 63 to 67, seems like the campus became a little more urban. But boy, in 63, there were traffic jams, 4 directions, roads leaving town, kids going home. Some of the farm kids had to go home to work, and that left the town. Now, the fraternities and sororities had parties, but the independents all left, and so I didn't do a whole lot socially. There was some, being in the dormitories, there would be some activities with East Bennett, say maybe Willard. Willard was a women's dormitory then. And you'd meet people that way. I met some people in class. In retrospect, I studied quite a bit. I really enjoyed the sports. Back then, we got into football games just by virtue of no extra cost to it. We had student ID cards. They were one color or another. The Gallagher Hall would only seat so many people, so you could only go to every other basketball game, but that was free. You could go to the wrestling matches. I became a huge wrestling fan. Byron Roderick was our coach, and we cleaned house. Nobody touched us. Henry Iva was the basketball coach. That was amazing too. I saw us beat Kansas the year Kansas did real well. I don't think it was Wilt Chamberlain team, but we'd see basketball games where before the clock, OSU to win the game 56-52. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but they also had this wonderful allied arts program back then for free. I saw Isaac Stearns. I saw Ravi Shankar, who's a musician from India. I saw Jacqueline Dupre, a world champion celloist. I saw the Smothers Brothers. All that was free. And I'm sad that the university experience now has turned into a retail experience for the students. There's nothing a kid can do anymore that they don't have to pay for. It was not like that in 1963. There was so many free activities going on, and you get invited to things that the town of Stillwater was doing. They had a big cheese festival, so we went downtown and did the cheese festival, we'd go to take in a session of the OSU rodeo, but I think now my feeling is that if the student wants to do anything other than what they've paid for at enrollment, they probably better get their plastic out. It's probably going to charge them. But back then, so much of it was free. And then our music program and theater program just did marvelous stuff. First time ever I heard Handel's Messiah. I'd not heard that before. I got introduced to classical music by free concerts our music program was doing. And Vivian Locke was running our drama program, and she did incredible plays. We saw Hamlet, or we saw Shakespeare. They did one UNESCO play about rhinoceroses that was really weird. And I knew some of the theater people well, and I knew some of the art students. Later on, those were the students I know. And so I went to all their activities.
That was my question as you're describing all this, is like, who did you go to these things with, and how did you?
Well, I eventually found friends in the English department, the philosophy department, the art department.
Yeah.
Sociology. A lot of my friends were in sociology.
Well, let's move into talking to some of that. Maybe talk a little bit about what you ended up majoring in, but also, some of those spaces with some of those students and some of the things on campus that were happening.
Well, I had gotten very interested in theoretical math and binary math. I got introduced to that at the junior college. So I took a course in symbolic logic, and the teacher was Lupke. I think his name was Neil Lupke, and I was doing pretty well. And he actually took me to coffee and invited me up to his office and encouraged me. And years later, I ended up grading papers for him. But I was interested in logic, and he encouraged me to take some additional philosophy courses the next term. So second term, my first year at OSU, which was sophomore year, I took an historical introduction to philosophy, and really enjoyed the readings. I'd lived in Greece, and we did a large segment on Plato, and I'd been to the very agora where Socrates walked. I'd been there. So I just really got interested in some of the, a lot of philosophy students will say, I want to study what is reality, and they're off on that. I was really always interested in the branch of theology called epistemology. How do we know things? How does our language and our math work, that we not only can do mathematics, but we can appreciate art? And I was interested in theories of knowledge rather than, even more so than I ended up going to seminary, but I was interested in epistemology even more than the narrow religious and theological issues. And by and large, the reason I did that was the courses I took with Neil Lupke, who took a leave of absence and went and got his PhD and came back. Only had one course with him, I think. But I had a course with Bob or Bill Radford, and he taught humanities. And we read early humanities. We read Greek. We read the Greek Iliad. We read. So they took an interest in me because I was making grades, and I wrote. I guess I wrote good papers. I made pretty good grades. Like I said, they invited me to the office. They encouraged me. Eventually, my senior year, I think I mentioned this to you on the phone, the second edition of Wittgenstein's Philosophical Investigations had been translated and was coming out. And the head of our department was excited about that. So he decided we would have a Wednesday night study group. Mm-hmm. And he told the faculty that you will attend. So there were 5 faculty members who came, and they invited 2 undergrad students, and I got to come. And we met every night, Wednesday night, and we talked for about 2 hours. We were included as peers with these PhDs discussing a very complicated and difficult book. And I was invited in, and just to be that valued as a part of a community had a large part with why I ended up being a philosophy major. The faculty, they were good. They read carefully. They graded fairly. They had high expectations for us. And what's interesting is I have that BA in philosophy. I've had 3 different careers, and I've succeeded at all of them. I was a local minister. I was head of a pretty large, in its day, a budget on the order of $1 million in the 70s, community service. And then I was a successful real estate broker. But I think it's goes back to the quality of education I got here at OSU. I've read philosophy all my life at home when I come home after dark, you know.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you keep your journal?
Oh, yeah.
And you still read philosophy?
Yeah, still do.
So talk to me some about what was happening on campus and how you got involved around some of the free speech issues and just the student movements.
Towards the end of my sophomore year, I happened on to the Wesley Foundation. And part of that was, it's really strange how things happen. I had a wonderful part-time job with Silverthorne, that's where I lived in Colorado, with Stillwater, City of Stillwater Recreation Department. And I could make good money refereeing basketball games, which was hazardous because the people playing thought they were a lot better than they actually were, and fights could break out, and I was a very poor referee, God bless them. But anyway, I made good money at that. Well, I'm out one day with a young women's little girls class, and this guy has been throwing the javelin. I asked him, if you stop doing that, I need to practice field for the girls. And he was the campus minister at Wesley Foundation, Dan Singelman. And he invited me over, and so I'd already been to Wesley Foundation, but I began to hang out there. And I think, you may have interviewed other people, I think the real impetus for the student protest movement was around women's dress code and hours. The freshman year, was my sophomore year, a freshman coming to OSU, women in 1963, had to be back in the dormitory, checked in by 8:15, Mondays through Thursdays. Friday night, I think, was 11 o'clock. Saturday night was midnight. Sunday was 8:15 again. And they checked on them. And then we men we could not wear blue jeans. We were supposed to wear collared shirts, but we had quite a bit of latitude. Women were not allowed to wear any form of slacks or pants. They had to wear skirts and blouses and preferably sweaters. Well, some of the women at Wesley Foundation and otherwise were protesting the dress code. And I think historically, the first kind of protest movement here at OSU was around hours and dress code. And I think that the people who initiated that were the women. And where that took us was where it took us.
Mm-hmm.
But we won that battle. We eventually won the battle on hours and dress code.
So tell me about your involvement in that.
Well, the dress code issue was pretty restrained. That was handled through channels. The event that really set the protest movement off was Religious Emphasis Week. The university had a Religious Emphasis Week. There was a scholar from Emory University who had written a book, and the title is misleading. It was a very complicated book about the New Testament in Greek and eschatology, if anybody knows what that is. He'd written a book called The Death of God, and he was invited by the Religious Emphasis Committee to come speak. Dean Com canceled the reservation. And I was in, this was a good class. I was in a sociology class with a Professor Larson, a PhD from Emory. Oh, he was a good teacher. And again, I talked to him after class and knew him and probably had coffee with him. He was exceedingly upset about that, as was the whole sociology department. And he initiated a letter of protest, and a number of students in the sociology department picked up the gauntlet on that. And we wrote letters, we appealed to the student senate, we went through channels. We had some protests that and partially were organized out of the Wesley Foundation and other places. They were pretty loose. There'd be 3 or 4 groups participating, including sometimes the dormitories, the women in the dormitories would show up. And they were very loose at that point. And we didn't win that battle. They did reissue, I think, they reissued the invitation to the author, but he wouldn't come afterwards. Mm-hmm. And I think some of the sociology folks may have commented on this. I think that some of the folks told him it would be better for the whole protest movement if he didn't come. But I don't know that I was some front lines on that. I was not directly involved in that, except very early on out of Dr. Larson's class. Some of us out of that class through the Wesley Foundation had a meeting, and then it went 3 or 4 different directions. Mm-hmm. Those were fairly contained. Those were through channels. The folks out of the sociology department, like Chick Dombach and Ron Stevens, and they were out front on that. Some of the few radicals we had from Society for Democratic Society, they chipped in. Women were a huge part of that. There was an active group of women who were. Those protests were. The people who showed up came from 3 or 4 different sources. As the war evolved, though, uh, the protest movement centralized. It just had to because the issue was the war in Vietnam. There was another issue in there that I was involved in too. Oklahoma had capital punishment, and we had a really serious protest movement, which we didn't win on capital punishment. And again, a Twilight Zone episode. I'm in the student union at the desk, getting people to sign, let's don't kill people, to try to convince people to not kill people, okay? Anybody willing to do that discussion? So I'm at the desk and this guy comes up, and I don't think he was a drama student. I didn't ask, but he says, "Oh, you can't do this." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Oh, my dad works at the penitentiary in the execution unit. If you do that, he'll lose his job." I never decided if that was somebody pranking, or if it was pranking, he sure seemed real. So anyway, another time I showed up for my shift for signing letters to the congressman to stop the war in Vietnam, and the table had been turned over. The campus police were there separating people, and seeing that scene, I just stayed in the sidelines. But we did have the capital punishment issue in there, and that was that had some visibility. Another big thing we did, though, we just went through budgeting here in Oklahoma. I bet something on the order of 100 of us drove down to Oklahoma City for a protest on the Capitol steps for money for higher education. We didn't win that one either, though. But the war, I think my view of it these years later is those, starting with the dress code issues, those kind of finally funneled in like a funnel down to the issue around the war. That a lot of that happened after I left.
Mm-hmm.
I left early in '67.
Well, it sounds like your perception is that sort of that activism was activated with these protests around women's dress and hours, and then there were the things that came after that with the freedom of speech. And
I think the protest movement at OSU started a lot earlier than people realize. That's my view.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that from talking with some of the women who were on front lines on the dress code issue.
Well, what is your perception of how that actually gained momentum? Because it does, I mean, there's a spark, but then people have to get behind it to think collectively we're going to try and change this, right?
Well, we were all young. We thought we could change the world and do it overnight. We'd all, even though a lot of the kids were from Oklahoma City and Tulsa, Oklahoma's still a rural state. We were wanting to shed some of that parochial ruralism. We wanted to be citizens of the world, kind of, in nonverbal ways. We wanted to grow up. We could see the world on TV. We wanted to be a part of that world. There's just, with growing up, there's some rebellion in the genes already for some of us. And, like it or not, and I think this is the reason the right wing would like to shut colleges down. When you study, you learn things. For instance, almost all of the church fathers of the Roman Catholic Church are African. They were dark. They were black. Come on, folks. You learn, you learn if you look at the statistics. There are other arguments, but if you look at the statistics, you learn that supply side economics produce an established wealth class, a great big bunch of poor folks, and really shrink the middle class. It's just happened. The statistics show that. 95% of the wealth in the country is held by X number of people. So in education liberates. You learn a different language. You take a trip to Italy. You take a trip to Japan. So inherent in the university for people who are wanting to do something more than get a card stamp to get into a degree or into a job someplace, you just learn things about so how many really brilliant women like Madame Curie were there who never got a chance to go to university? Huh? My wife and then my companion I was with 10 years, they both said the same thing. They said, men have deprived themselves of half of the intelligentsia, half of the intellect, half of the power of the world by, and they're right. And but what I'm saying is, a university with engaging professors, men and women, challenge all of the things you've been taught growing up. They challenge every single one of them. So that it's no coincidence that any good university is going to have a protest movement of some kind. I mean, that's what I think. And it's no coincidence that the fascists in this country want to close universities down. They always have. So, but at the heart of it, I really believe, and I know these people, I still talk to some of them once a month in a Zoom call. I believe, coming from a lot of different places, look where I came from, some of them from small towns. One of my friends in our Zoom group grew up in Barnstall. Okay? But I think there are a lot of folks who just have a profound sense of justice. We want to see justice. We want to see every kid have a chance to come to OSU. Yeah. And I think at the heart of that were a lot of people at OSU, and some faculty too, and some faculty who suffered for it. There were people who really believed in justice and wanted wanted to see every kid in Oklahoma, every kid in the United States, every kid in Ethiopia. We had this huge, historically the university's been tied to Ethiopia. Haile Selassie's written us thank you letters. Mm-hmm. But we'd like to see everybody have an opportunity. And I think there were enough folks of that persuasion here to mount a protest movement.
Well, the Zoom call you mentioned is with students who were here when you were here, mm-hmm. that were active in some of those spaces. Talk to me about the Friday afternoon tea.
Well, I mentioned to you on the phone, it started as a lark. Mm-hmm. I was in a German class with a wonderful teacher. He was an American, but he spoke German like, the Germans could not tell that he wasn't a German. And he was really trying to teach us German. I, at the time, thought I would need 2 languages because I wanted to do a PhD. Mm-hmm. Was pretty fluent in French. I could probably pass the French side of it.
Didn't you already speak Portuguese?
Yeah, I spoke Portuguese.
Did you speak Greek as well?
A little bit. I could read New Testament Greek eventually.
So moving on, just curious.
Been through about 5 languages, none of which I remember. The vocabulary would come back. But he would drink coffee with us after class, and 4th floor of the Union in those days. And so we had this idea of we'll just get together on a regular basis on Friday afternoons. His name, we called him Herr Bass, Mr. And he was just a wonderful teacher. And so this was This was a spring semester, and it might have been my sophomore year. I've forgotten. So there were 8 or 10 of us who we just got together on Friday afternoon and drank coffee, but we talked what was going on campus. We talked world affairs. We might even try to speak a little bit to push our conversational German. Well, that carried over into the next semester, and some of the folks involved decided we'd have an election and incorporate, and they got, initially we didn't have any status, we just met. So they got approved by the student union and had an election. I ran for vice president, but I didn't campaign. I thought, I don't want to campaign. Well, that's beneath me, and I was not elected, and my life was getting very intense on some other protest issues, and I'd met Judy somewhere in that timeline. So I continued to, but once it got organized as a student activity with, all the stuff through Student Senate and everything.
So like a recognized
Yeah, it was
student.
recognized.
Okay.
I was less involved. I don't even remember who and how that happened, but out of that general movement, we established a completely off-campus newspaper. That spun out of the free speech thing. We called it the Drummer, the Different Drummer, and I was really involved in that. There were 4 or 5 of us, and to do that, somebody said, well, we've got to do a 503C. And I filled out that application and signed it as secretary. And 4 or 5 of us signed it, and we incorporated it as a nonprofit. And our drummer had a half-life of a semester or so. And I don't know if any copies of it are still around or not. So we'd hand deliver these. Here's a very funny story. It's true, I promise it's true. We'd have to hand deliver them. And I delivered to Wesley Foundation, this Baptist Student Union Foundation, and then the girls' dormitory down on the corner from, I've forgotten the name of that hall. Yeah, I'm sure it's not a dormitory anymore probably, but that was a large women's dormitory. I had 3 places I dropped them off. So I drop them off at the Wesley Foundation. I go to the Baptist Student Union, and some of my friends I know, just from things, are there, and they've got this map of an auditorium in front of them. And I give them some newspapers, which they probably threw in the wastebasket, but I said, what are y'all doing? Honestly, a Billy Graham Crusade movie was coming to town. They had rented the movie theater, and they had a diagram of the seating in the movie theater, and they were deciding where they're going to place students from the BSU in the audience for the Billy Graham movie. So when they did the altar call, they would stand up and go and break the ice. They called it breaking the ice. They implanted people to break the ice. And I said, okay, well, let me leave you these copies of the Drummer. I've got to go on down to the hall down here and deliver the, but that happened. So anyway, I have a lot of Twilight Zone experiences, and but the Drummer, I wrote articles for it. It was an adventure. So I was foundational in Glee, foundational with Drummer. But then I left in '67.
As things were starting to move
Yeah.
different. So what were some of the articles you wrote?
I wrote one article I remember, just generally looking at the war, and I'd been radicalized by the war. I actually went to an ROTC program to. My thought was I'll do 2 years ROTC, get my master's degree, go in and do a PhD. But the war radicalized me, and I also learned something in basic training, I took basic training. I learned that the way they program you in basic training is that I would kill people. If the sergeant said, stab that person with your bayonet, I would have, because I'd practiced that a bunch. If the sergeant said, shoot that person, well, I'd shot silhouettes, I would shoot that person. And that was a horrendous crisis of conscience for me. My dad and all three of his brothers were veterans. My uncle had been wounded. My dad's older brother was out in the Pacific on the islands. He saw the Enola Gay take off. They didn't know what it was doing, but they all got up to watch it take off, he told me. So that was horrendous. And I don't think anyone in the OSU movement, anti-war movement, I don't think that decision came easy for any of us, given the way we were raised. It may have been for kids on the East Coast and West Coast, but we've been raised, you grow up in Phillips, Texas, you go to university, you serve your time in the Army, you have a career, you have a family. Well, that world fell apart, but some of the basic issues around that war remain kind of out of consciousness, but the United States has signed agreements to not intervene. We intervened to try to do what the French couldn't do. And to what extent Ho Chi Minh was linked to Stalin and Soviet Russia is really an open question. Anyway, the wounds of Vietnam have not healed in this country. They just haven't. And it's really hard to go back and even look at it and talk about the history, but the war radicalized quite a few of us.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember why you all decided to make the drummer? Like, what was the process to go from we need to write about this and we need to distribute?
Oh, I just enjoyed sitting and talking to people. I had these radical friends, and so we're talking. And again, this was kind of out of Tea and Glee Society at discussion stage, and they were saying, we can't get our articles published. We can't get our letters published. They have to go to the Old Collie, and they've got the board, and anything they find suspicious, they bump upstairs. We're not getting it published. And so somebody said, well, why don't we do our own newspaper? But the impetus for that came from some people at the table where we're drinking coffee who couldn't get what they wanted published. And it was related to the war. It was related to the free speech movement. And it was related to the way that the university was dealing with student and faculty protests. That was really kind of the top issue. That the way that we felt, and I'm sure it's subject to different interpretation, that university administration was using a lot of intimidation on certain students and faculty members.
Do you have incidences where you saw that happening?
No. They were friends. My friends in the philosophy department who invited me into those discussions, it was obvious to me they were being careful, but never did they speak of university policy or anything like that. Yeah. They just didn't. They were supremely professional. I did not see any of that. But I had friends in the sociology department who were telling me stories. Mm-hmm. And I knew the daughter of one of the faculty members in the sociology department. And I knew Dr. Larson on a first name basis too.
Right. It seems like there was, I don't know how public it was, so maybe that's a question. But it seems like it was fairly public that, like some of these speakers bureau recommendations or things like that, that, built some of the crescendo with the free speech, that the university president at the time very publicly maybe said, nope, rescinded, like we're not going to do that. And then there was some policies that were made maybe around speaker boards and things like that may have come after you left. But I wonder too how transparent these sort of like official responses were to students outside of the ones who were, primarily the organizers for these events.
Well, the first thing I'd say about that is, with only a few exceptions, and in my circle, everybody I knew, even though we were doing all kinds of other things, including getting married, and seeing family. I had it great. I could fly to Panama for summer vacation or spring break, and then Puerto Rico, and go through New Orleans on the way to Puerto Rico to see my aunt. But everybody I knew wanted to get that BA degree. And everybody I knew was also working some on the side to do it. We worked. We didn't have, our parents were not giving us a free ride. So in a way that splinters things, because everybody falls back on, I'm going to get my BA. So how much you share on that is just kind of like we're talking now, or like I've mentioned, the people I would drink coffee with. When I came to OSU the first year, go to the union, you could get a cup of coffee for a nickel. They paid the kids working behind the lines, serving the coffee, 60 cents an hour. So, but it was fragmented. What I also know about that, having talked with my friends a lot of years later and have read on it, is Dean Com had tremendous public support. I mean, he was getting letters from all over Oklahoma about make those kids act right. So I don't think his position and the power of the presidency and the power of the presidency to operate through whatever channels they wanted to, including our own university police department, I don't think that was challenged at all. So, so I think what happened, I left in '67 before some of the big protests. I think the changes that happened for more open administration of the government of the college happened by attrition. I don't think any of that happened overnight. I think kind of flattering actually. Some of the students and faculty look upon the years we're here as a blip and are interested in it. So that's flattering. But I think that we were fortunate in my son came, and they're walking across the campus one day, and the man, was it O'Halloran, who's president of the university?
Halligan was.
Halligan. He stops my son and Brock and says, come into my office. They go into his office. He says to him, sit in my chair behind the desk and tell me what you'd do if you were president of the university. My son, who from his mother's side has never been afraid to state The first thing I would do is make for sure every graduate assistant passed an English oral lecture presentation exam. And the president said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "I could not understand my statistics teacher." That happened. So I think we were very fortunate. And I find the current situation where the president resigned very, very sad. That could have been handled so much better for the integrity, not just the public appearance, but for the integrity of the university. That was draconian.
I have a procedural question. Why did you all decide to incorporate the drummer?
So we could publish it.
So it could, help me understand, because was it more than
We had to raise money.
Oh, you had to raise, yes, thank you.
We had to have some money because we had to farm it out. So we were going to have a treasury, and we sold advertising. I even though I didn't have much money, I gave a little bit initially. But if capitalist America, if you're dealing in money, guess what? IRS is going to be
involved.
And luckily, this is what happens at the university. We're sitting there talking. Guess what? We've got a business major there. And he's saying, "You guys are all airy-fairy. You better be pretty damn careful here, or you're going to have problems with the IRS." And we all turned to him and said, "Tell us a little bit more." He says, "You got to show a stream to handle the money." That's my memory of it. Others may see it differently, but.
So who donated and advertised to your effort then?
I suspect a lot of that came, "Don't repeat my name."
Yeah.
We sold some advertising. It didn't last very long. And after we got incorporated, I really was graduating, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I'd run out of student deferments. I was engaged to be married. I had no job. And I just felt stretched incredibly thin. I have a granddaughter who's finished her freshman year at Boston College. I have another granddaughter I'm on my way to see graduate from high school in Colorado. I tell them, your middle years in university are the best, your sophomore and junior year. You spend your whole freshman year learning the ropes. Your senior year, you're going to be very busy. So my memory is the 2 middle years. My senior year was really, really busy. And I realized finally I was making good grades when the Honor Society people actually contacted me and said, "You're in line to be Phi Kappa Phi." And I said, "What is Phi Kappa Phi?" And I wanted to maintain my grades. So, and senior courses are no cakewalk. I wrote some very long and difficult to write papers.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd have to preface everything I said as I remember it, that our worry with the drummer was, we've got to be editorially and financially and visibly responsible. And
how public was it that the people making it, like was your name attached to it? Whether people, right? It was all anonymous, correct? It was sort of.
One of the persons who was out in front of it occasionally tunes in on our Zoom meetings. There were 2 or 3 people out front whose names appeared on the bylines. They were like leading the charge. You think about the charge and,
Yeah.
and the cavalry saber down. They were leading the charge. There were a lot of others of us who were quite willing to not see our name in a byline. But I don't think, in terms of, I bet if you went back and looked at the who signed off on bylines, I bet you wouldn't find more than half a dozen names.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
Yeah. Well, and hearing you talk about having to pass them out, right? Like would you do that in a way that would try and limit people seeing you dropping them off places, or no?
I had 3 safe places, so I didn't worry about it too much.
Yeah. Talk to me about the Wesley. Actually, talk to me about the Wesley Student Union, because I know you've mentioned it multiple times as a gathering point, as a place to talk. I've heard other people mention it as even a space where later on some of the speakers who weren't allowed to come to campus were invited to come and.
Well, I'd grown up in just ecumenical churches, traveling so much, and basically out of congregational tradition. I wasn't a Methodist, but the Methodist Church had invested heavily. They had two full-time campus ministers. We did, and I showed you some photographs, we did that coffee house, and boy, that brought a lot of kids in, and then they come around for others. They always, or occasionally, often enough, you could get free cookies and coffee and a sandwich there sometimes. There were speaker things. Judy and I, my wife and I, were involved in something they did called the Academy Series. And I think every Monday night we met for 2 hours and discussed historical and theological Christian history, development, and theology. It had a profound effect on my going into the ministry, the Academy Series did. The campus ministers, some faculty members, they taught. It was like a course. It was like free university. We read Paul Tillich, for instance. Niebuhr we read. So we did that. It was a hub. A lot of things were going on. A lot of people were being drawn in by the coffee house, the issues, and just to meet people. There were always, if you're a young man, there were always a lot of lovely young women there. That's where I met Judy. And it was a comfortable and safe place to be. A lot of things just spun off out of that. They weren't directly related to it. One of the campus ministers from that time is still alive. He's well up into his 90s. He joins us on the Zoom calls once in a while. I also rented from them. They owned 3 properties, and my rent house was on the property they owned there, and I walked through every day. That's how I got to, one quick story, that's how I went to graduate seminary on a complete scholarship. I was walking through the Wesley Foundation, and Mrs. Collins, who was the office manager, called me over and said, "Bob, I've arranged an interview with you with Dean Quillian from Perkins School of Theology. Show up in a coat and tie and be your best self." And I said, "Yes, ma'am." And when the interview was over, I was offered a full academic scholarship, including housing, and including $150 a semester for books. Can you imagine? It doesn't exist anymore. So I went to Perkins. So there was just a lot going on there. I was involved in that Academy Series. I really spent a lot of time setting up chairs and cleaning up after the coffee house. And it engaged a lot of students in different ways. For instance, you could come down on Sunday morning and wait for a few minutes, get on a bus, and go to First Methodist Church. And when my son was here back in the late 90s, he would do that. And sometimes he sat in the same pew as Eddie Sutton. So, but there was no organized cell or cult working out of the Wesley Foundation. There was no conspiracy going on there. There were just a lot of people passing through.
Well, I think that's an interesting way to be able to say it was sort of a social hub.
Mhm.
And I don't know that I definitely didn't think there was an organized cult, but I do hear it come up a lot as a place where people seem to feel safe congregating and talking about things that didn't necessarily always feel safe to talk about on campus.
My view, my impression, my experience was that those of us who did more than pass through or come by for a sandwich or just to go to the break or to hear a speaker, my view was we realized, and I think this is a part of a good education, we realized we had some issues with the society. We just realized there's some things that are just not right here, you know? The kind of poverty we have in this country for who we are. There's some things that's just not right. Every kid from Hominy High School ought to be encouraged to come to OSU or go to Old Mulgee or to go to trade schools. There's some things that are just not right in terms of how things get presented. The Pentagon Papers and all the stuff that came out about what really happened in Vietnam, if you could ever talk about what really happened. So I think, I don't think I want to talk about that in terms of alienation. We don't feel particularly alienated. My daughter could qualify for the DAR on both sides of the family. We're the native sons. I love that line from Writing on the City of New Orleans. We're all the native sons, we here in Oklahoma. We're your native sons and daughters. And we're telling you, no, we don't want a Bible in every classroom. We want to see the First Amendment stand as the First Amendment. Okay? Well, where does that put you in Oklahoma if you believe that? Well, that's where we were in the 60s. But I'm not going to call that alienation. I'm going to call that, we're your native sons. We've had a wonderful education that our university and states provided us. For instance, is we know how to read the First Amendment. Wish you guys would come on board. But,
yeah,
that is not, in Oklahoma, that is not a majority view. Still isn't. 60 years later, still is not the majority view.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that 60 years later, your peers that were active and to stand up against that, stand up with that voice recently, did that again at OSU through their colleague.
That is kind of delightful.
I love it.
Yeah, well, no, it runs the other way around. How many zillion people have come through OSU in 60 years, and for our generation to be kind of remembered, and some of us get a chance to interview and come back on campus. And when we come back on campus, somebody picks up on the tab for that. We go to nice luncheons. The people in several departments say, we remember what you did. I just, again, I jokingly talk about the Twilight Zone experiences I've had in my life to still feel at home in my university is a real blessing. I just, I bleed orange.
Oh, well, I have kept you a little bit longer than I had hoped.
Well, please edit as you need to.
No, it's all
well,
wonderful in helping piece together.
The problem when you talk with me is every story is a long story. How did you get from Hominy, Oklahoma to Panama? How did you get from Panama back to OSU? So every story is a long story.
So those are the best kind. And it should not be an easy answer to say how you got from Hominy to Panama.
It's not. Let me tell you about the U-2 planes landing. They landed on one wheel, and they chased
So
them with
crazy.
pickup trucks, and they screamed. You could hear them coming.
Yeah, that's so
I was
crazy.
there. Yeah.
What a life experience.
Yeah. Well, thank you. No,
Yeah.
I appreciate it very much. I've been on a lot of other campuses in 60 years, but I think there's some unspoken qualities about our community, and it goes back to, I think our past president really understood being a land-grant university, trying to reach out immediately to the people in this state and in the world. When I came here, there were pictures of our mission to Ethiopia. There was a picture in the Student Union, Haile Selassie in a full military uniform with a sword.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to mention I'm an OSU grad in my obituary. I want that in there.
Well, they can point to this interview too, and I'll tell them why.
Okay, well,
I love
please do with it what you want.
it. Thank you for your
Okay,
time.
thank you.